The following program is a Perils for Pedestrians special presentation.
I'm not from New Jersey. I am from Washington, D.C., and let me tell you that the sort of sad scene that Tedson painted about my hometown and the biking and walking has turned around completely. We now have a mayor named Adrian Fenty who's a bike racer and who goes out lunch hour and races around the tidal basin with some of his buddies, and they are a really cool-looking group. In fact, our mayor had a very bad accident a couple of weeks ago and really did some damage to his bike and his body, but refused to get into the ambulance that was called and hobbled off home and was back at it a couple of days later. But the Washington Post has done a story on its front page about how it is the policy of the Fenty administration to make, not only to make Washington, D.C. An even more biker and hiker-friendly city, but also to openly discourage people from bringing automobiles into the city anymore. I think you're going to see this in a lot of cities. You know, Bloomberg has tried it unsuccessfully in New York, but he'll be back. You see it going on everywhere. Let me tell you quickly who I am. I was a journalist covering Congress for a long time, from the Nixon administration through Reagan. Talked the company into founding this magazine that covers anything below the federal level, states, cities, counties, districts, and so on. And I have found that beat to be far more interesting and far more rewarding than covering the U.S. Congress. The dirty little secret is that Washington makes a lot of noise and a lot of huffing and puffing and posturing, and it doesn't do very much. And out in this country, there's a heck of a lot going on, and it makes for a very, very good story. I'm an episodic hiker and a commuting biker. I've hiked in the Cascades here, I've hiked the Olympics, I've hiked in Colorado, and I'm about to hike the Himalayas in India. But I'm not really that great a walker. I just do it when I sort of have to. Same with biking. I'm not a racer or anything like that, but I've biked to and from work for 15 years on this wonderful Rails to Trails trail right along the Potomac River. Thank God for Rails to Trails. They've made such a huge difference. And I've taken advantage of it in a number of areas in the country. I do think that we are entering a period of enormous opportunity, and we need to be prepared to seize that opportunity. It's not just $4 a gallon gas, although thank God for it. Though that is a big part of it. But it's changing lifestyles, it's worries about global warming, it's even more worries about the state of our own health and the size of our waistlines. In the past year or two, it seems to me something really has changed. And it's not just the new urbanists who are talking the language of walkability now. It's developers and realtors and chambers of commerce and transportation agencies. Market forces are sending signals that none of us can afford to ignore. Our larger cities, a lot of people don't realize this, but our larger cities like New York City are becoming more and more residential all the time. The conversion of office, especially with the World Trade Center disaster, but the conversion from office over to residential in southern Manhattan alone is one of the biggest demographic shifts we've seen in a long period of time. It's going on in a lot of other cities too. One of the most poignant symbols I've noticed, I know of, and my magazine has covered this, is in the Dallas, Texas area, where there's a new residential project called Legacy Town Center, an urbanist experiment whose promoters tell prospective residents that, quote, "The beat of the city surrounds you. You're in the know. Everything is close at hand. You can walk, skate, or bike and find everything you need," end quote. The interesting thing about legacy center is that it's not in the city at all. It's in the suburb of Plano, 15 miles from downtown. The management has sold buyers on the notion of walkability in a place where hardly anyone has walked anywhere by choice for the past 2 decades. And that's what's going on. It's a trend you see in a lot of places. Since the year 2000, Christopher Lineberger notes in his new book, The Option of Urbanism, more than $100 billion has been invested around the country in transit systems of many different sorts. When major transportation projects have gone to the voters for approval, more than 2/3 of them have passed. Lineberger, who's a developer himself and who teaches real estate at the University of Michigan, may be the boldest prophet of walkability anywhere. The United States, he writes, is on the verge of a new phase in constructing its built environment. The problem for walkable urbanism in the next few years, he says, won't be the absence of demand. It will be a shortage of supply. The demand is so great, he insists, that we are going to have a difficult time keeping up with it. That's why urban housing close to the center is so much more expensive now than housing in the suburbs and exurbs. What needs to be done to make a break with the car culture is monumental, involving a redefinition of our society and a restructuring of our economy. We have seen absolutely no leadership from Washington, but a lot of encouraging signs out in the country. A continued lack of direction from the top is going to make the task all that harder, but not impossible. I think the heart of any new strategy for us, for this organization, has to be a continued disinvestment in the automobile, not only because it no longer is our best mode of transportation, but because it is causing side effects that are damaging to our health and to our economy and to our well-being. There are signs everywhere that the nation is starting to make an adjustment, but bike sales are booming. Traffic on hiking and biking trails is skyrocketing. Last week, I went down to Union Station in Washington to have a lunch with someone. I rode my bike down there, and there is a lot of bike parking at Union Station. I mean, hundreds of bikes are parked down there. I couldn't find a place to park my bike. I had to tie it up to lock it up to a road sign. Very interesting story in the Washington Post. There's a young woman who bikes there every day. And like a lot of people, the Post has done a story about this too. Like a lot of people, instead of getting a new fancy road bike or hybrid or whatever, she has this old clunker that costs $15 from a secondhand store. That's what she likes to ride around town in. The pressure on the biking places there are so great that the cops came along, clipped her lock, thinking it was an abandoned bike, and took it into the cop station. She had to go retrieve it, and she was really ticked and made them pay for the lock, and so on. And now the standard is you have to have a pretty fancy bike to park at Union Station. The media is full of stories. One thing governing, especially on its website, is to track media all around the country, newspaper stories about what's going on in states and localities. And so I see this. There's an enormous increase that is covering this change that's taking place, covering suburban commuters who've made the switch to walking or biking to work, often using a mixture of mass transit too. With hints on how best to make oneself presentable in an office if you don't have a shower, how to ride most safely, and so on. It's on the television networks too. NBC just did a thing about people changing their commuting patterns and biking rather long distances, 15 miles one way from suburbs into the city and back. But we all know that there is a dark side to this adjustment. Highly stressed drivers are facing longer and more grueling commutes, and there are increasingly altercations with hikers and bikers. Fatalities among both pedestrians and bikers are up. In many places, they are way up. I see it almost every day in Washington, in my commute, but it happens in the most unlikely places. I just came across a story from a wonderful town where my wife and I have a condominium because I like to ski in Park City, Utah. An incredible altercation there on our street, Park Avenue, where some driver, there were 7 bicyclists riding down the street, and a driver came along and screamed at them to get on the sidewalk, which is illegal. And of course they didn't, and so he got out and pushed 2 or 3 of them over, and in the end of this thing, all 7 bicyclists had to pin this guy down on the street. The cops came and carted him away and pressed charges against him. You can't get away with that kind of thing in Park City, Utah, let me tell you. And, but that is not uncommon. Those stories are coming up more and more often. The Washington Post has a front page story last Sunday about the global trends on biking, in particular, with the US, Canada, Australia, and Britain lagging way behind Europe in the number of people, in percentage, the number of people commuting by bike to work. And then the opposite trend taking place in India and China, where they're abandoning bicycles and taking up the car. We'll see how long that lasts. But I think we have to be honest with ourselves on this whole question. The tensions now are not just between drivers and bikers, but they're between pedestrians and hikers as well. I have had a number of incidents, I could tell you, where I've been riding in downtown Washington to work or back and have been yelled at by pedestrians. Even pedestrians walking against the light, not always, but walking against the light, who feel that a bike should not be treated as a car and that they needn't get out of the way. And there's this whole ethic building and a whole tension building between bikers and hikers, and I think we need to address that. On the trail I ride in, on the Capitol Crescent Trail, the Park Service now is beginning to impose speed limits and other restrictions on bikers because the hikers are complaining so much, including dog walkers who, of course, don't have their dogs on leashes. So there's this tension that's building up, and I don't claim that the hikers are right or the bikers are right. I think this is something this has got to be worked out, and we can't address that here in this room, then who can? And if we can't come up with ideas on how to lessen this tension and how get everybody on the same page, who can? I think the other thing we have to address is what Sharon talked about. It's far more cosmic, and that's the rewriting of the basic federal transportation law next year. Walkers and bikers have to form whatever alliances are possible with other groups that want to shift the emphasis away from highways and toward alternatives. The car culture is not going to fade away easily. It's as much a part of American culture and tradition as mom and baseball and apple pie. It's deeply rooted in our political system, but it is finally on the run, and we have to do whatever we can to usher it quietly out the door. The stars are aligned. It's up to us to take advantage. I really look forward to working with Sharon and a very capable, inspiring staff that is committed to exactly what I've been talking about. And I'm extremely impressed with the level of organization of this conference. Finally, let me end up by introducing the mayor of Seattle, Greg Nicholson. You couldn't have a more appropriate mayor to address this group, and it's not entirely serendipity because Seattle is an obvious place to come. But Greg Nichols is sort of the obvious guy to be the mayor of the place, too. It is interesting because I think only 4 months ago I introduced him in this room at this podium for another conference that my magazine had on technology and government. And we have had him at various events for the magazine. What he's really known for, beyond being a very capable mayor of a very dynamic city, is almost being the poster boy for local government taking control of national and even international issues. Mayor Nichols was the guy who put together a group of mayors very large group of more than 300 now, I think, mayors from around the country who basically have signed on to the Kyoto Protocol. They basically said, our federal government won't do it, so we're going to do it from the bottom up. Cities are the main places where carbon is emitted. It's our responsibility to do something about it. If the President and the Congress won't do it, we will start it. And it's been a remarkable achievement. He epitomizes for me why we started governing. He is a symbol of the new kind of leader you get in states and localities, and there are a lot of them who are saying it's our responsibility, it's our time to act. If Washington is going to continue to behave the way it does, then we have to do it ourselves. And on an issue where you could say, well, yes, but there's no reason that we should do it here because the Chinese aren't, and that's not what's happening. And it's a very, very heartening development. He also, interestingly, is now the vice chair of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and he will be its next president or chairman, whatever they call it.
As Peter was saying, the issue that I've probably gotten most noticed for outside of Seattle has been the issue of climate change. And it wasn't an issue that was on the front burner when I became mayor in 2002. I was amongst so many people who thought this is an important issue, but it's ways off in the future, and it's going to hit places like Phoenix before it hits places like Seattle, and I'm sure somebody's doing something about it. Well, in 2004, 2005, that changed for me. I had my aha moment when we had a winter here that was very warm and very dry. And that meant that the ski season was canceled in the Cascade Mountains, which was a tragedy for many of our people. And for me as mayor, it meant that some sustainable systems that we've relied on for over a century to provide us with clean, pure water and green power were at risk. If there's no snow in the Cascade Mountains, there is no water and there's no power in Seattle and our surrounding communities. And so I found myself with the mayor of Tacoma, our sister city to the south, urging people to shower together. And that's a pretty radical thing for the leader of a city to do. And I decided when the Kyoto Protocol became law in February of 2005 that that was an opportunity for Seattle to pledge that we would reduce our emissions by the amount that treaty called for. But we also knew that if it was only us, it would be purely symbolic. And it's hard to ask people to change their behavior, to change their lives for purely symbolic reasons. So I asked mayors around the country to join with me. And to date, 850 mayors have signed on and pledged to take local action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. They represent 80 million Americans, about the population of Germany. So it is no longer a symbolic effort. It has changed the conversation in our country, and it is my great hope that we will see an administration in January that will not only acknowledge that this problem exists, but actually take the revolutionary step of taking responsibility for trying to help solve it. So it doesn't take very long in the issue of climate change to realize that there are really two places that we need to go in order to deal with this crisis. One is energy. How do we power our homes and our buildings and our industries? And I'm very proud that in Seattle, our municipally owned utility, Seattle City Light, emits 0 greenhouse gas emissions. It's the only electric utility in the country that can say that. We're very proud of it. And then the second place that you need to go is transportation, because 98.5% of the fuel in our transportation system is fossil fuel. And it is the burning of those fossil fuels that is changing our climate and perhaps destroying our future. So what you're doing here today in Seattle is extraordinarily important, and we look forward to learning from you, and we also look forward to bragging just a little bit about what we have done. An awful lot has changed since you were here in 1986, and the fight against climate change is one of those, but there are many others as well. In the last couple of years, we have tackled our local transportation problem in Seattle. We, like many cities, deferred maintenance on our bridges and roads and sidewalks and the like. And so we asked our voters to step up, and for the first time in 40 years, we now are reducing the backlog of repairs. But we decided we weren't going to focus simply on automobile lanes. We wanted a balanced transportation system in the 21st century, so we're building new sidewalks. We are building bicycle trails and lanes and sharrows, and we are building transit corridors as well. So we recognize that the age of the automobile is past, and that the key decision that people need to be able to make is what color shoes do I wear on my walk to work or transit, or what color trunks do I wear on my ride to work. And we're working hard to try and create that environment. Today I want to acknowledge, though, that we stand on the shoulders of folks who went before us. You talked a little bit about that in the beginning of this conference so many years ago, but in Seattle we have had a similar group of visionary folks who helped get us on the road, if you will, to a different future. The Burke-Gilman Trail in Seattle is a very, very special place. Margaret Mead, the famous anthropologist, once said that never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And the Burke-Gilman Trail is a story of that kind of perseverance and patience, and how a committed group of citizens can make a huge difference. The Burke-Gilman was a railroad line that started about 120 years ago by Judge Thomas Burke and Daniel Gilman. They developed a train line for what was not a well-known railroad, not a huge railroad, but in the middle of our city. That rail line eventually lost its customers and closed down, and local groups in Seattle started to connect the dots. Estelle Bertag, who is here with us today, decided to lobby the mayor at that time. She dressed her daughter up in a bright pink dress for the very first birthday, and as I understand, her daughter was extraordinarily cute and got the mayor's attention. And as soon as the mayor's attention was on Estelle's daughter, Estelle did not waste a second. She began in on Mayor Ullman about why it was important to preserve the Burke-Gilman and the work of the Burke-Gilman Trail Park Committee to begin to transform this former rail line into a trail within our city. Her effort and others led to significant political support, and the Burke-Gilman Trail opened in 1978. Because of the activism and support, that trail now is a 25-mile long trail. It is extraordinarily well used. I'm not much of a biker, Peter, but I am a walker. I love to walk. And early in my time as mayor, my wife and I walked 2 marathons each. And we did all of our training on the Burke-Gilman, and it just is a marvelous transportation corridor and recreational facility in the heart of our city. When I became mayor, there were 3 missing links in the Burke-Gilman Trail. I am proud that 2 of those have now been filled and those segments are completed. And I am very pleased to announce a little advance announcement that when I present my budget to the City Council in about 2 weeks, there will be $8.6 million in there to complete the final missing link by 2010. It will be an important part of our goal to triple the number of people who use bicycles as their mode of transportation in our city. So I want to acknowledge the folks who started that, the pioneers in this effort, the Burke-Gilman Trail Park Committee. They started a national movement. They helped to start the idea of converting rails to trails. And I'm honored that 8 of the 10 original members are here today. So I'm going to ask them to please come up and join me here, if you would. They are Estelle and Irv Bertag, Sandy Wood, Jim Todd, Morton Wood, Merrill Hilly, Nancy Hood, and Evelyn McChesney. we are using this opportunity, and I thank you for the opportunity to present them each with the Seattle Department of Transportation's annual award for excellence. It's a little late.
38 years.
It's taken us a while to recognize this, but we're there. And I want to also acknowledge that two of the original members are not here, Mimi Rockefeller and Frank Chesney. Frank passed away last year, and Mimi was unable to be with us. So I want to thank them on behalf of the people of Seattle and the people of the United States of America for helping us to recognize what a valuable asset we have within our cities, if only we recognize it. And if that weren't enough, I get to do something as mayor that, especially those of you who are from the other Washington or not from Seattle don't have to listen to, but I get to make a proclamation. And I am very proud today to proclaim September 3rd, 2008 to be Burt Gilman Trail Day in Seattle. And I encourage all citizens to join me in saluting the Burt Gilman Trail Park Committee and their positive impact on our communities and on the environment. Thank you. So welcome to Seattle. Don't work too hard. Enjoy our city, spend your money, and please don't wait 22 years to come back again. You're welcome, and we're very pleased that you're here. Thank you.
And we have one more treat. We have one more person we want to bring up here for a special presentation. A former staffer at NCBW and the current executive director of the League of American Bicyclists, a true leader in the movement, right, Tedson? And a man who works at many levels to transform communities, Andy Clark.
Thank you, Sharon, and it's a pleasure to be part of the movement. The League is probably one of the few organizations that can claim a history longer than yours, Tedson, by a few years. And sometimes we think we still have some of our original members with us, but after 128 years, they're fewer and further between. Mayor, Grace, Sharon, Peter, King, Bill, Tedson, thank you all very much. One of the League's signature programs in the last 5 years is our bicycle-friendly community designation program. And particularly thanks to Bikes Belong and Trek and the support they've given us, we've been able to expand that program. And since we started it in 2003, we've had over 212 communities apply for designation, and about a third of those, 84, have been given a designation. We're currently staring down the barrel of a new round of applications where more than 50 communities are either seeking their first or renewed applications or certification. And we took the liberty of fast-tracking one particular application. I'm sure you can probably guess which city that was. Oxford, Mississippi? No. The reviewers, for those of you who don't know, we go through, we ask a lot of questions. Pete, I'm sure you can confirm that we seek a lot of information in these applications. And we go through a review process. And folks really are impressed with the Bicycle Master Plan that you are not only have adopted and written, but are actually implementing, are doing. There's a plan network that many of you will see parts of over 450 miles that is being built, is being implemented. There's an amazing program called Bike Smart, which is going to, in 3 years, literally reach into every household in the city and tell them about cycling and walking as options for transportation. There's the car-free days that I gather there's one on Sunday, which if you're still here for, you should definitely make a point of joining. There's a mode share that at 4% for cycling is good by U.S. standards, still a little lame by European standards, so we've still got some work to do, but by U.S. standards, 4% mode share is extremely good. And so we're delighted today to be able to give Seattle the designation at the gold level in our bicycle-friendly community program. the mayor tells me that's the University of Washington's colors, which we usually don't customize the signs along that way. But it's really recognition of the city's leadership over 30 years in the case of the Burr-Gilman Trail, but over 20 years. And my guess is that if I was to ask for a show of hands for people who've been inspired by what the city of Seattle has done, by what people like Pete Lagaway and Megan have done, there would be a pretty wild forest of hands. So thank you for your leadership. Thanks to the Cascade Bicycle Club, the Bicycle Alliance of Washington, the Bike Advisory Committee in Seattle, which again is exemplary and shares in the recognition the city is getting in this designation. And thank you, Mayor, for your leadership on sustainability issues and climate change. Thank you for leading our mayors and our nation in facing up to that challenge. And please know, as you work with your fellow mayors, that bicycling and bicyclists are ready to play our part, and the Bicycle Friendly Community Program, we think, is a great roadmap for helping cities achieve their goals and realizing the role we can play in the transportation piece of the puzzle. So thank you very much for your leadership. Thank you.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.